Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Glenn just said he's probably about 8 minutes from logging on. So he just wanted you to know that. So I don't know if you want to do the first thing without him or what. Got stuck in traffic.
Yeah, the first thing is an extension, so that shouldn't be a problem. All right. I'm taking us out of the webinar, and Allison, you should be co-host if you want to start, open up the presentation. Okay, everybody, we're live.
All right. Welcome to February 24th, 2022 BAR Small Workshop Meeting. My name is Lindsay Van Slamberg. The other board members present with me today are Glenn Gardner, Bill Huey, Julia Martin, and Fillmore Wilson. Actually, I cannot see the side panel as to who is here. Allison or Frankie, could someone, I know Glenn said he will be a few minutes late. Glenn will be joining us shortly. City staff present today are Frankie Pinto, Senior Preservation Planner, Allison Hill DeLong, Preservation Planner, and Tori Parrish, City Architect. The order of the meeting today will be as follows. We'll start with an introduction and overview of each project by city staff for the benefit of the board and the public. This will be followed by the applicant presentation, which is limited to 10 minutes. Any and all presenters should state their name clearly for the board, and persons affiliated with the project, such as owners, developers, designers, and consultants, should speak during this time rather than during public comment. The board, by ordinance, can ask the questions of the applicant at any time, and by custom, we do so on the heels of the applicant's presentation. This will be followed by a period of public comment. If you are speaking from the public, again, please state your name first and last clearly for the record. Public comment will be followed by city staff comments and recommendations. And after city staff comments and recommendations, there will be a 5-minute applicant response period. This is not an opportunity to reopen your presentation. It is merely to respond or clarify anything raised in the public comments or the city staff comments and recommendations. This will be followed by board discussion and a vote. At this time, the presentation and public comment is closed. If you are asked a question by a board member, you may respond, but otherwise, public comment and applicant presentation is closed. The following items have been withdrawn or deferred today. Agenda item number 3, 34 Pierce Street, and agenda item number 6, 40 Charlotte Street. Finally, please limit your comments to architecture only. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, lot, traffic, lot coverage, and livability concerns are not within the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. Now I'll turn it over to Frankie for some virtual meeting protocol.
I'm actually going to be driving this time, so it's Allison. All right. So protocol, we have staff will control the PowerPoint presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during the presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. Video and microphone has been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, not board members or staff, will only be given the capabilities to speak when they are called on during the public comment period. Chat and the Q&A functions have been disabled for everyone. The applicants, all team members, and the public have been required to register, indicate the project they wish to comment on, and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Just as an in-person meeting, all applicants heard today are part of a public meeting format. If you have registered and will speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, you will need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called in order by project. Staff who call on the registered members of the public to speak for each project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called on. And for the board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and for their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. The chair shall reread the motion verbatim for accuracy. If a board member needs to recuse, he or she will be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they are ready to return into the regular meeting. Results and staff comments will be posted on the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/BAR. These proceedings are being recorded and broadcasted to the City of Charleston's YouTube channel.
Thank you, Alice. Well, we're on agenda item number 1, 265 Rutledge Avenue.
So they are requesting their first one-year extension of a demolition approval. This property is not rated in the Cannonboro, Elliott Borough neighborhood, circa pre-1951 in the Old City District. And we've got some plans here showing the entire structure. They're requesting to demo in the back west part of the property. Here's an approximate location from Google Earth. East elevation, part of it is obscured by a wood fence. South elevation. West elevation. And north. Did you want me to read our staff comments for this? Or not yet?
Did the applicant, I know that it sounds like this is something that we need to approve by ordinance, but the applicant's here if he wants to give a short presentation. And you're on mute, Mr. Humans.
That better? Can you hear
Yes,
me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. I essentially gave the presentation, and you guys came out, looked at the structure in person, and approved it. But we, with I guess COVID and everything, the construction hasn't moved along as quickly as I anticipated. So the demolition has not yet occurred. So it's just essentially just a one-year extension that I'm requesting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Allison or Frankie, is there any public comment?
We do not have any public comment.
Okay. Allison, if you'll read your comments.
Sure. Staff comment, this is a vested right, first year approval extension requiring automatic board approval if submitted in a timely manner. Is good for 1 year and may be renewed 4 times in 1-year increments per ordinance section 54-962. This extension is to expire on March 12th of 2023. Staff recommendation approval of a first 1-year extension of final approval to expire on March 12th, 2023.
Thank you, Allison. I did skip over. Are there any board questions? I don't know if anyone has a question for staff or the applicant. Okay. All right, we'll move into board discussion and a vote.
Madam Chairman, I'd like to make a motion for approval of 1-year extension per ordinance.
All right, we have a motion for approval of the extension. Do I have a second?
Fillmore, I'll second.
Fillmore. Put it to a vote. Julia,
Yeah, in favor.
Glenn,
Yay in favor.
Bill,
Yay in favor.
Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously.
All right, thank you.
All right, agenda item number 2, 174 Fishburne Street. Allison, if you'll give us an introduction overview, please.
Sure. 174 Fishburne is requesting partial demolition of a rear 2-story portion of the main structure. This property is not rated in the West Side neighborhood, constructed circa 1930, and it's in the historic materials demolition purview. So here's some context for you on Fishburne near Lawrence and some existing site photos showing that 2-story portion that they're referring to, and some street context. Here's some Sanborn maps showing that they're, the original or close to original footprint. And then it was extended in 1951, but is still 1 story. And showing those that rear portion existing in 1957 and 73 aerials. And then I can turn it over to the applicant.
Good evening. How you doing?
Good, we can hear you, Mr. Washington.
Okay. Yes, I'm Jamal Washington. I thought Johnny was going to speak first. Yes, I'm Jamal Washington, and my biggest thing is that I've been born and raised in this building since I was a child. It's very sentimental to me. It means a whole lot. My mom passed away back in 2020 during the COVID first hit in August, and one of the things I always told her that, I'll make sure I preserve the house and do my best to help renovate it, because it started decaying and falling down because she took sick. So, that's one of the things that I've taken on as a project of mine. And also one of the other projects that I had several years ago at 280 Ashley Avenue. So it's very sentimental to me. It's a very personal project. So you guys' approval will really mean a whole lot to me to move forward with this project.
This is Johnny Tucker. I'm the architect. Thanks, Jamar. So I'm here, and first of all, I want to thank the board members that were able to meet me out there this morning. So I'm going to sort of repeat a few things, but I don't think all the board members were able to be there. So I'll be brief. If you could scroll, Allison or Frankie, to the next image, please. And so next image, please. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. Those are showing the area of proposed demolition. And the next image and the following image, please. Okay, so as you can see there, there's the front portion of the structure was probably an early 1900s. We don't have a definitive date on it, but maybe not a Freeman's Cottage, but obviously in the Freeman's Cottage style, single room, wide with side piazza. And as staff was showing you, there was sort of a series of infills and additions that were added over time, increasing the building footprint, and ultimately resulting in, and Jamar can answer this if you need a definitive date. I think it was in the early 80s when Jamar was still a child. His stepfather added the second floor. And so I know we're here, it's a little confusing, but we're here just for the rear portion. We're actually working with staff to rehabilitate, renovate the front portion, which is obviously historic and of architectural significance. Obviously, it's been severely altered over time, but we're going to work with staff to get the approval. We need to raise the structure approximately 2 feet because of some severe flooding issues and to get to required FEMA flood elevation. We're going to restore the piazza Some of the trim is still there. If you sort of squint, you can see it, but we're going to restore wooden columns, wooden railing, try to be more appropriate to, it's a quiet little building, but try to preserve, or not preserve, but renovate it so that it brings back just the sort of the quiet dignity of the house. We're not presenting obviously what we're proposing in the area in the rear, assuming that you will give us a demolition this evening. But I'll just briefly, we have already been through zoning and we've got it zoning approved. The proposed addition is essentially the same mass, obviously taller because we're having to raise the building 2 feet. But it's going to be a 2-story addition, same footprint, but we think a much nicer. The massing will be broken down so that's more complementary to the front historic structure. But I know we're not looking at that tonight, so let me just jump to what we're asking for, which is the request for the 2-story portion. Now, it's been a little confusing, but staff has already approved, obviously, the second story, which was constructed, like I said, sometime in the early 80s, which would place it being less than 50 years old. But because that first story was dated and shown, a portion of it was in 44 and a portion was in the 50s, that's why we're here. And I guess our contention is that when the second floor was added, it was essentially or effectively, it was sort of a demo at that point, because when that work occurred, obviously there's not a 1-story building encapsulated in that structure that's there now. The ceiling framing, the roof framing, obviously the roof form, were all removed. You can see that the exterior siding was removed throughout. Obviously, we're going to restore the front house to something more appropriate. The foundation, the board members that were there this morning, we were able to look at that a little more closely. The foundation is all new block or 1980s block. And there's also an unusual, not a very good condition, where the stucco is raised above the foundation line. So if you see like that front elevation, the lower right-hand image, the window sill appears to be 8 inches above the foundation line. That's a little misleading because the floor line is about 32 inches below that. So there's a raised stucco foundation over the wood framing. Obviously problematic all around. But what I'm getting at is that the original foundation of the 2-story structure and the 1-story structure that's more than 50 years old has been altered significantly. Jamar didn't talk about this. If you need to have him talk about it, he can come back. When the second floor was added, also, I think a significant number of the interior walls were removed / relocated. Interior finishes were changed. So I believe it's all wood paneling on the inside. So our feeling is that even though there may be some minimal, or I shouldn't say minimal, there may be some material that dates from more than 50 years old, we feel like it's probably, or not probably, it could only be some wall studs, maybe some floor framing, but it's nothing that is adding any architectural significance or telling any story to this building. And I guess I'll wrap it up there and just say, I sort of feel like, in a nutshell, that the demo occurred when the second floor was added. And not maliciously, obviously, and I think at that point, Pierre might not have had jurisdiction over this area, or maybe it was because of the 75-year rule, which it used to be. But that's all. I think the board members, I was able to answer a few questions this morning. If you have any now. I'm happy to address them. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tucker. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant? All right, we'll move on to public comment. Frankie, do we have anyone speaking from the public?
We do not have anyone signed up.
Okay, and my understanding is that I'll be reading any position statements from the Preservation Society. Is that right? Since they're not here, there's not one for this, but I want to make sure I have that right. Okay. All right, having no public comment, we'll move on to city staff comments and recommendations. Allison?
All right, so he had mentioned there was technically 2 applications with this property, and one was for raising, elevating the house 2.3 feet, and that can be reviewed at a staff level per the design guidelines for elevating historic buildings, which were adopted by the VAR on July 24th, 2018. And second staff comment, historic aerials confirm that the first floor of the rear portion of the house was present in the 1950s. Sanborn maps show that while the house had a different footprint in 1944, the footprint at the time was longer than the small portion in the front that the applicant labeled as historic. And number 3, per the site visit on February 24th, it appears that no historic form or fabric remain of the original part of the house that was encased in the 1980s 2-story addition. And therefore, staff recommendation is final approval for partial demolition.
Thank you, Allison. Mr. Washington or Mr. Tucker, did you want to respond to anything raised in the staff comments?
Thank you.
All right.
No, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. All right, we'll move into board discussion and vote at this time.
I can start, and I have some comments planned, but honestly, I'm completely aligned with staff, so I don't need to add anything to that.
Fillmore Wilson here. I agree with Julia. I'm in line with staff's comments.
This is Lindsay. I agree with Julia and Fillmore after the site visit this morning and hearing about the history and having some of those questions answered. I'm in agreement with staff.
I agree as well. I'll gladly make a motion for final approval for partial demolition per staff comments 1 through 3.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for final approval for partial demolition. Do I have a second?
Second that.
All right, I'll put the motion to a vote. Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Bill,
Yay in favor.
Lynn,
In favor?
Julia.
In favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Washington and Mr. Tucker.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 3, 34 Percy Street has been withdrawn by the applicant, and we are on agenda item number 4, 138 and 140 Wentworth Street. Allison, if you'll give us an introduction overview of this project.
Sure. 138 and 140 Wentworth Street is a request for conceptual approval for alterations to the historic house and bathhouse, new side porch, which is on the house, and exterior stair on the bathhouse. This is a category 1 and 3 structure in Harleston Village, constructed circa 1840 in the Olden Historic District. Here is an aerial shot showing the property, some existing site photos. And the street. Some Sanborn maps from 1884 and 1955, Bathhouse. Historic image. And I can turn it over to the applicant.
Hi, Rachel and Lucas Boyd with Boyd Architects. The project is 138 and 140 Wentworth. 138 Wentworth is a residence completed in 1842. These were two separate properties until very recently. The city has approved a request to combine the two lots. Next slide. So as a reminder, here's the survey showing the historic structure in the front, a historic octagonal bathhouse at the rear, and a detached garage at the rear completed in the 1980s. The scope of work includes modifications to all three, plus a new pool house. So with that, let's skip ahead to page 8, the site plan. All right, so this project was on the agenda at the 127 board meeting where we received conceptual approval for the new pool house, the changes to the garage, and most of the changes to the main house. The changes to the historic bathhouse were deferred until a visibility study could be performed by the board members. And two changes to the historic house were also deferred for further study, namely modifications to the front entry door and the new side porch on the west facade. And we will get into our revisions shortly. Next page. So here we have the existing first floor plan. We're using the same strategy as last time throughout the presentation. Areas with BAR relevant changes are highlighted in red in the existing plans and elevations. Next. So this is the previously proposed first floor plan for reference. Next page. So here, this is the new first floor plan. You will see there have been some modifications to the west side porch at the top of the page. The overall size of the porch remains the same and very similar in plan, but we have revised the detailing as you will see in the elevations. So speaking of the elevations, let's skip ahead to page 23.
Yes.
So here's the existing main house front elevation for reference. Next page. This is the previously proposed front elevation calling for a new glass panel in the entry door. Next page. And on the revised front elevation, you will see we are retaining the existing entry door as is. The other changes to the main house received prior conceptual approval with the exception of the new west side porch. So let's skip ahead to the west facade on page 30. So here we have the existing west elevation. Next page. And this is the previously proposed west elevation. Next. And here's the revised west porch. The board's comments were that the previous detailing at the new porch was a bit too heavy and a bit too modern. Next page. So this was the previously proposed rendering showing the metal structure referencing all the historic wrought iron work on the building and the site, and the black kind of white color palette you see throughout the property. The curved arch brackets mirror the building's curved elements like its lunette windows. And these arches are also being used on the garage detailing, if you remember. So there's been an effort to tie all the architecture together a bit. Next page. So here we have the revised rendering, which we feel is both lighter in its detailing as well as more traditional. We have done various things to achieve this, like a thinner roof fascia and hipped roof to keep the roof slim, more delicate metal curved brackets, a light colored porch ceiling, thinner columns with further articulation like recessed panels and a capital detail. And lastly, we have added column bases. So with that, let's go back to the existing plans of the historic bathhouse, page 20.
All right, this is Lucas Boyd now, page 20. We will be looking at the existing plans, and these are just for reference. If we could go to the next page. These are the previously proposed plans. So next page. And here are the new plans. The two items that caused a deferral last time were the roof changes and the new exterior stair. We're no longer proposing changes to the roof, neither the material or the color, so it will stay put. The new exterior stair remains in its previously noted location and design. We feel the stair isn't visible from the street. The proposed location disrupts as little historic material as possible. For example, we're using the second floor porch door as the main door into the second floor space rather than adding a new opening in one of the other facades on the second level. The existing interior stair is very unusable and not code compliant with modern day standards. So with that, let's skip ahead to the elevations of the bathhouse on page 42. All right, so these are the existing elevations of the bathhouse. Next page. These are the previously submitted elevations calling out the changes to the roof. Next page. And here are the revised elevations, noting no change to the roof. So let's skip ahead to page 48. We previously showed these diagrammatic 3D views of the bathhouse, showing the new exterior stair and revised roof. Next page. Here's the new 3D views showing that we're retaining the historic red material. The simple metal stair remains in its previously proposed location and design, tucked away from the street. The general idea behind its design was to keep it simple, not so that it doesn't detract from the bathhouse itself. And the simple metal handrail matches the existing metal pickets on the second floor, as we discussed the last meeting. And we're proposing just wood on the treads and the landing. And that concludes the changes we've made to the BAR submission. So it's our understanding that the board performed a site visit of the property this morning to determine visibility of the bathhouse.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
All right, so that's the end of our presentation. We'll open it up to you guys now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. and Ms. Boyd. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
I'll ask a quick one. If we could somehow look at the existing west elevation.
Julie, do you want the bathhouse or the main house?
The main house where the new porch is.
I believe that's page 31, if that helps.
Gotcha.
That's impressive, Rachel. So my question is, the lighter roof structure that you have now, how is that kind of interfacing with the trim that's at that original floor of this upper porch there? Are you going to retain that? Or it just seems like they're going to kind of crash into each other. I don't know if it was possible to maybe pull your roof down or what. That page, I think, is actually the proposed.
Yeah, that's the previous.
Yeah, so previously we had the roof a little thicker so that it kind of met the trim and hid all of the trim. And based on the board's comments that it needs to be a bit lighter, right? We've slimmed it down. And so I think at this stage, it will probably just sort of merge into it.
Yeah. We went from a shed roof to a hipped roof just to get that thinner fascia all the way along. So we don't have that, the thicker profile on the sides. So, but yes, this would be a kind of trickier and more nuanced collision of the two.
And we can study that during construction documents and provide more info to the board.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other board questions at this time? All right, we will move into public comments. Frankie, do we have anyone speaking from the public?
Yes, we do. First, we have April Wood.
This is April Wood from Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the request for conceptual approval for alterations to the historic house and bathhouse at 138 Wentworth Street. We thank the applicant for their time with us, and we are pleased to see that the applicant has responded so well to the board's comments from last month. We are in support of this application and recommend conceptual approval. Thanks.
Thank you, April. Frankie, do we have anyone else speaking from the public?
No, no one else signed up to speak.
Okay, I have a position statement from the Preservation Society. Dear board members, the Preservation Society appreciates the changes that have been made to address our comments since the previous review, as well as those of staff and the board. We especially want to acknowledge the retention of the bathhouse roofing and its characteristic tinner's red color, and commend the applicant for preserving this significant historic structure. Other positive moves include retaining the existing front door and lightening the treatment of the side porch, all of which has worked to improve the project as the design process is intended to do. Thank you for considering our position in this matter. Sincerely, Anna Catherine Carroll, Manager of Preservation Initiatives. All right, I think that is it for public comments. So we'll move on to city staff comments and recommendations. Allison.
All right. All right, so we have the previous comments on here. If anyone wants me to read any of them, please let me know. Staff observations for this proposal is the proposal no longer includes the alteration of the front door or the replacement of the hand crimped metal roof on the bathhouse. The existing access to the second floor of the historic bathhouse is via an internal stair. The proposal relocates this access to the exterior, assumingly to carve out more interior occupiable space. And number 3, per the February 24th site visit with the board, part of the second story of the bathhouse is visible from Smith Street, including the second floor landing of the proposed stair. Staff comments: the proposed west porch pergola design has been revised to a more detailed and delicate structure which is appropriate for the house. The light colored ceiling also enhances the delicate nature of the structure. Number 2, it is understood that the previously demolished portions of the round pilasters at the west porch entry will be replaced as depicted in the rendering. While not labeled in the drawing submittal, it is noted and unfortunate that the proposal includes demolishing the cornice that exists between the first and second floors. Staff proposes the resetting of the porch system to maintain the existing cornice, and applicant to clarify status of cornice and round pilasters, which you may already have done when you were replying to Julia's comment. I think that's the trim that she was speaking about. So after we get through, you can clarify, but I think you already did clarify. Number 3, the recessed lights are not typically used on historic buildings, and while the west porch pergola is new, we recommend the use of 3 matching pendant lights centered in each bay to reflect the 3 equal and matching bays on the house. Number 4, at the bathhouse, the proposed new stair and landing depict a railing which matches the height of the existing second floor railing. However, the existing railing appears to be less than 34 inches tall. Applicant to confirm height of existing rail. Staff recommendation, conceptual approval with board and staff comments.
Thank you, Allison. Mr. and Mrs. Boyd, did you want to respond to anything raised in public comment or in the city staff comments and recommendations?
Existing
Sorry,
and
you're on mute.
oh, sorry about that. I was on mute. We just wanted to address the pilaster comment. The currently engaged pilasters are existing and we're not messing with those. So those will stay as is.
Did that come through? Can you guys hear us?
Yeah. I think we heard the part about the engaged pilasters. I didn't know if you got cut off after that or if that was the end of your.
Oh no, yeah, that was it. That was yeah, we're not touching those. Those are there now and they're not being
going
modified.
anywhere.
Okay. I think we lost Lindsay, the chair.
Oh.
So bear with us for just a minute. Maybe she'll pop back on.
Is it appropriate for me to still ask a question, staff?
I also was going to ask, because technically there was a couple clarifications in the staff comments, and so I didn't know.
I mean, Lindsay's back, I think.
I don't know if that was I apologize.
Just to catch
That's
up
okay.
to see, we were, this was the rebuttal this was the clarity provided by the applicant. We were asking about that trim, those pilasters that are part of that are underneath that cornice that's within the wall.
Thank you,
If
Tori.
those are to be removed or not.
Okay.
And Lindsay, technically in our staff comments, there were a couple things to confirm. And so I didn't know if it was appropriate for us to ask that of them to confirm the other things or how that would work.
I think that's appropriate.
Okay.
And I don't know, Mr. and Mrs. Wood, I don't know if you already started to respond, but you can continue. And I think now's an appropriate time, Allison, if you want any clarification from the applicant, you can certainly get that.
Yeah, you guys clarified about the pilasters, which is great. Can you clarify about that piece of either trim or cornice that kind of goes, above those pilasters? Is that going to stay, or is anything going to happen with that?
It will stay, but get covered up in the latest scheme partially.
Okay. And then I think we needed confirmation on the height of the existing railing on the bathhouse.
Okay, before we move to that, I'm sorry, I was
Yeah.
on mute. That partial covering up, because the way you've got it depicted as the hip on the roof is going to just run up that trim piece diagonally with the pitch of the roof.
Correct. And the height of the roof is currently set by the pilasters. So it's resting on top of those little, the pilaster trim, the capitals, right? So that would be a reason that we can't really go under to avoid the trim.
With the hip roof, correct. Okay. It just doesn't show up that it looks on the drawings as if you've removed it completely.
Oh, no.
Right. If so, that was an oversight. No, we're going to keep it. And then as far as the railings go, we are not sure what the height is, and we can confirm that.
Okay. I think that's it for our staff clarifications.
Can I ask one question about the rail at the bathhouse, Lindsay? Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead, Julia. And just a note to the applicant, if you had any other response after this, I'm not counting these questions against your 5-minute response period. But yeah, Julia, go ahead.
Thank you. Rachel and Lucas, would it be feasible to lower the landing of your new stair, like the upper landing, so that you took one final step up as you entered the existing porch up there? I'm just thinking that way the discrepancy between the new code compliant rail and the existing rail wouldn't be so stark, and you would also decrease the visibility of it. I just didn't want to go down that path without asking you if you thought that might be feasible.
I think that's a great idea. Then at least the stair can have, again, we have to confirm the railing height. We know it, we just don't know it off the top of our head. Sorry about that. But let's say it is lower. I guess we'd be looking at still retaining the not compliant landing on the porch where you'd be landing, but at least the stair itself would be compliant. So, and I don't think having that extra step up is a problem at all. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I agree.
Thanks.
Were there any other questions for the applicants at this time, either from staff or amongst board members? Okay, and now, Mr. and Mrs. Boyd, if you'd like to further respond or clarify anything raised during public comment or city staff comments and recommendations, you can do so at this time.
No, I don't think so.
I think we're good.
All right. Well, we'll move into board discussion and a vote.
All right, I can start. And I agree with staff that it's great that they're able to keep the existing roof. I think it's really important and beautiful and definitely visible. Also think it's great they're keeping the front door, and I appreciate the lightening of the porch at the west. That will be tricky to flash around the old second floor beam trim, but I hear their point about wanting to keep the new beam at the height of the pilasters. So I think I'm comfortable with that. And if they'd be willing to explore lowering the top landing of the new stair, then I think I could probably make peace with that as well, even though it's slightly visible to the public.
This is Bill. I agree with staff's comments and Julia's recommendation about that landing. I think regardless of what we're looking at with the flashing of that new side porch roof, there's probably inevitably going to be some form of a reglet that's going to need to be set into that wall. And so there will be some degree of finesse around that cornice line, especially, and then the pilasters. So I'm sure it can be done. It will require, obviously require some finesse at that point, but I guess we're acknowledging that fact. So I'm in agreement with recommendation.
Fillmore Wilson here. I'm nearly in agreement. I think Bill's absolutely right that when you land the hip roof of the west porch roof onto that band, it's going to require some intervention in the historic material. Hopefully it can be done delicately and lightly and as reversible as possible. I think the new design certainly is much nicer and lighter than the original design. I find it a little bit incongruous, but it's certainly differentiated, which is, I think, appropriate, and it does reflect elements of the existing historic structure. So I certainly can support that. The stair, I find is actually quite, the top part of that stair is quite visible from Smith Street, from several locations on Smith Street. And I think adding that stair to the exterior of that really nifty little structure is just not quite appropriate. And so I'm not in support of the stair.
I will echo essentially what Fillmore just said. I looked at the bathhouse this morning, or specifically about the bathhouse garden building. That is such an incredible little building. I appreciated Julia's comment. I think that would certainly help with regard to lowering that landing, but I think that is too great of a building to add a stair, at least in that location, to. And I had sort of thought through, I mean, there are ways that stair could definitely feel much more custom and much more appropriate than it's currently designed. But of course, we have to vote on what is submitted and what's shown to us, not a different design. I know there are a few little odd things that have happened to that building, you know, over the years at some point, but at this moment, I don't have the comfort level with adding that stair to really change the way that building is perceived from its exterior. Otherwise, I don't have any comments to add beyond what has already been said.
This is Lindsay. The only comment I'll add is really that I'm in agreement with my fellow board members, Fillmore and Glenn, on that stair. It is visible from multiple locations on Smith Street, and I don't think it's appropriate here. And that's something at this time I would like to defer. That's really all I have.
I ask Fillmore and Glenn and Lindsay, are you imagining that maybe there's a different configuration of that stair, a different sort of plan of it that might be more respectful or more palatable? Or just, you just can't imagine one on the exterior?
I think that I'd be open, and this is something as a layman, I won't claim to know how to do this, but if it was in a different location, perhaps not visible from the street, when we walked Smith Street this morning, seeing how visible that was and how great this little structure is. And I think based on the Sanborn maps, this is what, somewhere between 1840 and 1880, this was constructed. It's just such a great little building. I'm not completely opposed to an exterior stair. It just, the visibility from the street, I think, takes away from the structure.
And I think I feel the same way with Lindsay, in that there's a lot happening there. I mean, the back of the house comes really close to this little building already. The proposed stair, I think, is probably taking the path of least resistance, but it all is just sort of colliding down in what is a really tight area. And it doesn't give me a comfortable feeling in its current proposal. And are we able to go back to that elevation by chance, Frankie? So, for instance, it's kind of a straight run down. I think there are ways that could be a lot more elegant if it were an exterior stair without pretending it was original to the building. I also hate to lose that railing that shows what the form of the building really was in what are the visible areas from the right of way. So yeah, I mean, I would be open to them exploring other options. And I think, I'm positive that the applicants understand what a gem of a little building it is. I mean, it has a few quirks to it of tweaks, obviously, over time to have been lived in, but it just is a really special little building that I think we need to ask them to be extremely careful with. Or instead of careful, I'm going to say light-handed with.
I'm glad I'm just kind of taking that to the next step. Like, would you imagine maybe minimizing the landing and not having it be the full width of that, bay between the columns there, for example? One possible move.
I'm not certain. I mean, then as you drop that landing down, it then kind of infringes on, on that masonry base. I just think it's a delicate structure, even though there are a few things that, have not been done delicately to it. I think a proposed stair really should be delicate as far as how it touches and engages with this building.
All right. So from three of us, I'm hearing that it needs to be restudied.
Just for clarification, I am in agreement with staff's recommendation on the that west porch. So I have no issue with conceptual approval on that piece.
And I concur on that. This one building is the key for me that I think maybe should get parceled out from a conceptual approval if that were an acceptable consideration to spend more time on kind of exploring how to possibly make this work.
As Fillmore here, I'm in agreement with Glenn. I have no objection to the alterations to the main house, and so I mean I would be, if it's doable, Lindsay, I'm certainly comfortable breaking that out and giving conceptual approval. The staff comments on that portion, but I think the stair situation on the bathhouse at the very least needs a pretty substantial restudy. I'm not saying there's not as I think everyone's great. I'm not saying that there's not a way to do an exterior stair, but I think it really needs to be done, as Glenn suggested, very, very carefully and delicately, and as minimally visible as possible.
Fillmore, was that a motion you were fashioning?
I mean, I'll attempt one if Glenn and Lindsay, both of you are in, there's a question, okay with a restudy of that as opposed to a denial of it?
A deferral for restudy?
A deferral for restudy?
Yeah.
Is that acceptable?
Yeah, if that's a question, I mean, I would say yes on that, as long as it's clear that that restudy would include studying potential location, height, detailing, landing, not just sort of a say, yeah, we looked at it, this is the best thing.
Right. I mean, I'll be honest, my inclination would be for denial as submitted. And I'm assuming that they could come back with a different design without a time penalty. Am I correct there, Lindsay? If it were a new design on the stair?
I'm going to defer to staff on this one. If we deny the effect of that from a timing perspective on the applicant.
Timing as far as when they would be able to resubmit?
That's
yes,
right.
that's
right. Right.
I'm trying to avoid putting too great a time burden on the applicant.
Understood. Yeah. No, my understanding is you all submit you have a denial for the bathhouse, for the stair, then as long as they brought forward basically any new design, I mean, they could do that at any point after this.
Okay.
So yeah, there wouldn't be a time constraint.
Yeah, I would.
So Fillmore, could I ask, I mean, I think that actually would help them keep this clean and clear.
Yes.
If everything else receives what we've discussed, if the bathhouse were denied as submitted with a note that a restudy, is allowable, I think that actually might help them in a moving forward manner.
Okay, I'm fine, and I'll venture a motion then for conceptual approval to alterations of the main house with staff comments, denial of the exterior stair at the bathhouse with a board comment that a substantial restudy of the stair would be reconsidered by the board.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval of the alterations to the main house, staff comments noted, and a denial of the exterior stair as submitted with a board comment for a substantial restudy. All right, do I have a second?
Second.
Is that Glenn?
Yes.
Okay, put it to a vote. Julia?
Nay, opposed.
Bill?
I'm going to say yay in favor because we're keeping a stair and minimizing it in a potential restudy. So as long as a stair presence is there, I think that's okay. Thank you. Yay in favor.
You said so long as the stair is still present, Bill, 'cause this motion.
No, I was only saying I'm voting yay in favor because what Fillmore's motion basically said was that I believe that a revised stair proposal would be entertained to minimize more delicately the presence of the stair. And as long as that's on the table, I'm in agreement with that.
Okay, Bill, that's my understanding as well. So,
Yes.
All right. Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Glenn,
Yay in favor.
the chair votes with the majority and the motion passes with 4 voting for and 1 against. Thank you, Mr. and Ms. Boyd.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 5, 76 Rutledge Avenue. Allison, if you'll give us an introduction and overview, please.
Sure. So 76 Rutledge Avenue is requesting the removal of multiple roofing types to re-roof entirely with architectural shingles. It is a category 4 in the Harleston Village and in the Old and Historic District. Here is an aerial to give you some context of Rutledge near Wentworth. There's existing site photos of the house. And you can kind of see a little bit the couple different roofing materials. Context photos of the street. Some Sanborn maps from 1902, 1944, and 1951. And now I can turn it over to the applicant.
Hello, everyone. I'm Laura Walker. I'm the homeowner of 76 Rutledge, a modest Charleston single. If you can go to the first slide. Okay, perfect. Next slide, please. All right, so to give you a little historical background of how we got to wanting to replace part of our roof, we have several slate tiles missing along the public sidewalk. We do not know when those fell, but in May 2021, we had slate tiles fall onto our neighbor's driveway, damaging their car, and then we had them repaired, and insurance unfortunately refuses to cover any damage to their car or damage from falling tiles. So that was a real bummer. And then another tile fell just in December onto the neighbor's driveway. Thankfully, no injuries that day. And I would really like to possibly replace the slate section of the roof with some other material. If you go to the next slide, I'll show you some background on the roof. So we actually have 3 different roof types. So we have asphalt shingles, which is the majority of the roof, slate tiles, which is the hazard part, and then a small copper portion. Next slide, please. All right, so here you can see it's not the prettiest roof on Rutledge. The slate tiles that fell my driveway are just on the north side there, and you can see asphalt shingles and our copper over the piazza. Next slide. So here's just another perspective. We've had many repairs over the years. The previous owners had repairs, and we're still having this issue with tiles falling. And we're very concerned as well that our neighbor has kids. You know, we have a 2-year-old, people walk by on the sidewalk, what kind of danger this is. Next, please. Here's zoomed in. Next. So here's just some damaged slate tiles that I'm sure has happened over the years. Next, please. And here you can really see the repairs that have been done. Next. Okay, so when measuring the roof, 45% of the roof is slate and 55% is non-slate. Next, please. Okay, so here are our immediate neighbors. As you can see next door, they have a beautiful house, all asphalt shingles. And then the other roofs around us are copper, copper, and copper. So no slate in the area. Next, please. So we're currently requesting to remove the dangerous slate tiles and replace with asphalt dimensional shingles to match the rest of the roof, as you can see in the pictures. Next would be next. So here's a rendering. So it all blend together. Next. All right, and here's the exact roofing material that we are proposing. And we've also looked at the Secretary of Interior standards for preservation. And I am hoping, from what I've read, that this would be under the category of life safety when considering the impact of exterior features. I know that everyone in Charleston loves slate tiles and the historical part of them, but because this is a small portion of the roof, we're hoping that you'll approve this because we feel it will not impact the overall historic environment and character of the house. All right, and that's it.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Fillmore Wilson, I have one quick question. On your graphic with the slate represented as 45 and the non-slate represented as 55%, does that 55% include the piazza roof, or is that just the main roof? I beg your pardon?
Yes, sir. Sorry, it does include the piazza roof.
Thank you very much for that clarification.
Any other board questions at this time? All right, we'll move into public comment. Frankie, do we have anyone speaking from the public?
We do. We have April Wood.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the request for the removal of multiple roofing types and to re-roof with architectural shingles at 76 Rutledge Avenue. We have no objection to replacing the asphalt shingles at the rear addition of the house with new architectural shingles. The slate is very likely original to the house and clearly delineates where the original house is and where the addition was added. If this addition was constructed today, a hyphen or pinched in area of the building mass would likely be required at this location to further differentiate the new construction. The Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation call for repair rather than replacement, and if repair is not possible, replacement in kind. To conform to these standards, the roofing material should be replaced with new slate that matches the original if it cannot be repaired. Regarding the piazza roof, this is turn metal, not copper. Turn metal is a traditional roofing material in Charleston and can be coated if there are issues with this roof. As turn metal is no longer manufactured, it is even more important to retain as much as possible. If replacement is needed, copper would be an appropriate replacement roofing material. Both the slate and turn metal roof are superior in quality to an architectural shingle roof. These roofing materials are also character-defining features of the historic structure. The removal of these historic materials will downgrade the historic character of the house. We respectfully recommend denial of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Frankie, do we have anyone else speaking from the public?
We have no one else signed up to speak.
Okay, I will now read a position statement from the Preservation Society. Dear board members, in keeping with the comments of the Harleston Village neighborhood, the Preservation Society is not supportive of this request as proposed. It appears the existing asphalt shingles are limited to a later rear addition, while the slate and copper are applied to the older foremost portions of the building. It would advocate for the selective repair or in-kind replacement of the slate material. However, if the board entertains full roof replacement, we encourage use of a higher quality, more compatible material for the historic building in context, such as standing seam metal roofing. Thank you for considering our position in this matter. Sincerely, Anna Catherine Carroll. Okay. Ms. Walker, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised during public comment? Oh, excuse me. I apologize. That's it for public comment. Allison, if you'll give us the city staff comments and recommendations, and then Ms. Walker, I apologize, and then I'll give you a chance to respond.
Staff comments. Slate roofs are a historic character defining feature of Charleston single houses from this period and of historic structures within the old and historic district. Number two, the slate portion of the roof is the most visual and prominent from the street. In addition, replacing the entire roof with slate will damage less historic fabric than replacing the roof with new architectural shingles. Number three, the policy statement on Charleston standards encourages property owners to retain and repair historic fabric rather than replace. Furthermore, the policy states, when deterioration is so severe that replacements, if necessary, the new feature should match the old in design, color, textures, and where possible, materials. Number four, staff recommends replacement of the roof entirely with slate so as to be one congruous material and the most historically accurate and visually prominent material. Staff recommendation denial with staff comments.
Ms. Walker, now you have the opportunity to respond or clarify anything raised in the public comments or in the city staff comments and recommendations.
Okay, as to the Historical Society, the turn metal coated roof, I would be happy to keep that metal roof. I'm really concerned mostly about the hazard of tiles falling on the sidewalk or my neighbor's driveway. As I wake up every morning, I look out the window to see if a tile has fallen down. So it would be wonderful to have something safer.
Thank you, Ms. Walker. All right, I'll open it up now for board discussion and a vote.
Fillmore here. I'll start. I am in agreement with staff's recommendation for not replacing the existing slate with asphalt shingles. I understand that there's a concern if there are a number of loose slates that keep sliding off the roof. A qualified roofer familiar with historic slate roofs could do a inspection of that roof, and if it is in reasonable shape, could secure or replace, identify, secure, and replace loose tiles. If the problem is pervasive, then I think at the very least the original slate portion of the roof should be replaced with slate.
This is Julia. I agree with staff and Fillmore. I guess the one exception to my agreement with staff would be comment number 4 about replacing the entire roof with slate. I think it would be okay if they wanted to replace their existing architectural shingles with a like material, and I guess it would also sort of demarcate the line of that addition, even though unfortunately the addition just extrudes the existing roof line. I still think that's reasonable, but otherwise, yeah, I agree that the slate is important and needs to be maintained, repaired, and or replaced in kind if necessary.
Glenn Gardner, I agree with that as well. It is not easy because I think we all understand the cost implications of maintaining a roof like this. And so I hope for the owner that, you know, quality repairs can be made as opposed to a replacement, but trust that she can find somebody to give a really good opinion on that, because I do understand the safety concern because that's a real scenario, but we also do have our charge to protect historic materials.
All right, so I will make a motion to for denial with staff comments 1, 2, and 3. Is that clear? I think that leaves the door open for her to replace the existing asphalt shingle roof with the same material.
Did you want to add a board comment as to that, Julia?
With the board comment that replacement in kind of the asphalt shingle is acceptable.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for denial with staff comments 1, 2, and 3, and a board comment that replacement of the asphalt shingle with the same thing would be acceptable. All right, do I have a second?
No more. I'll second.
All right, I'll put it to a vote. Bill?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Julia? Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Walker.
Could I ask one more question? Would I, if I wanted to possibly do the whole thing as a metal, would that be more historic, and would I go through this again?
I'll defer to staff on this. I would first encourage you to reach out to Preservation Society and Historic Charleston Foundation, and they can probably give you some good resources for this. But as far as, I believe that would need to come before the board as a new motion and go through staff approval.
Okay, thank you.
All right, agenda item number 6 has been withdrawn. We are on agenda item number 7, 33 Moultrie Street. Allison, if you'll give us an introduction and overview, please.
Sure. 33 Moultrie is requesting restoration of after the fact demolition of historic features of building, including canted storefront and accessory structure. It is not rated in North Central, constructed circa 1914 in the historic materials demolition purview. So here is context photo, show at the corner of Moultrie and Tracy. This is some site photos we had from the previous presentation and submittal, previously existing site before the after the fact demolition of materials occurred. Some more photos showing what was previously there. And here's some context photos on the street. Some of the materials. And then these were the photos from after the removal of materials took place before it came to the board to you last. And here's some Sanborn maps from 1944 and 1955. And now I can turn it over to the applicant.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Hey, this is Jessica, and I have Kyle Thaxton, the owner, with me. We are asking the board's approval, as you see on the notes we've made on the drawings. We are asking to restore the storefront including all the detailing, trim, door, barge board, and the spindles, which we showed in those pictures we have kept and we will restore and replace back in the storefront corner. The block foundation that was constructed as temporary will be removed and the original configuration replaced on that corner stairs. The broken tile that was around the foundation and retaining wall will restore that to the original stucco around that foundation. We have removed the scroll steel flat columns and replaced with wood square columns that we know are historically appropriate. The parapet wall that was constructed on the North Tracy side for that roof, we will remove that and go back to the original roof line that was in the first set of pictures, first or second of that North Tracy side. All the original windows, true divided light, single pane wood windows will be restored and replaced same. And roof line restored, and the original siding, 1/2-inch beveled pine siding to be used in the exterior. And I believe that is it.
Thank you, Jessica. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant?
Just gonna ask, Allison, if you could, is there a sheet with the proposed design that we could just have on it? Thank you. Actually, Jessica, you do still have those elements that were removed before that are photographed?
Yes, they're all still in the house. Mhm.
Any other board questions at this time?
Sorry, I have one more. The spacing of the columns as proposed, is that like different from what's there now? It seems like what's there now is more centered, like your center column isn't centered, maybe not. It's just how it is. Okay.
Yeah, I think they're the same placement that was there.
Cool.
I would call. Mm-hmm.
Julie, does that answer your questions?
That's all. Thanks.
Okay. All right, we'll move on to public comment. Frankie, do we have anyone speaking for the public?
We do. We have Chris Bonner.
I'm fine this time. I don't need no comments.
In that case, I have no one else signed up to speak.
Okay. I have a position statement from the Preservation Society. Dear board members, the Preservation Society is supportive of the restoration of this unique commercial corner building in the North Central neighborhood and appreciates the applicant's willingness to work with the BAR to reverse unapproved insensitive work. We ask that all character defining features be restored per previous staff and board comments. Thank you for considering our position in this matter. Sincerely, Anna Catherine Carroll. All right, that is all we have for public comment. We'll move to city staff comments and recommendations. Allison, if you'll provide those, please.
Sure. So I have the previous staff comments on here. And our new comments are: the applicant's proposal returns historic fabric, particularly the corner store entrance and its detailing, windows, siding, etc. Number 2, concerning the previous staff comment number 3, staff agrees with the applicant's presentation that while there may have been an accessory structure on the 1951 Sanborn map, the previously existing accessory structure at the time of the stop work order was a modern replacement and did not contain historic fabric. Therefore, staff feels that the previous comment number 3 should be stricken. Number 3, the changes being requested are the removal of the pierced metal posts at the front porch to be replaced with wood posts, and the removal of the mid-century broken tile finish on the foundation, stairs, porch, and retaining wall to be replaced with stucco. Both proposed changes involve later alterations to the house. These alterations are part of the building's evolution and convey its change over time. However, there's insufficient evidence on the age of the metal posts, which potentially could be newer and non-historic. However, the broken tile finish is a character defining feature of mid-century homes and should be retained. Staff recommendation is approval of the replacement of the metal columns with wood columns and denial of the replacement of the broken tile finish with stucco, incorporating staff comments.
Jessica, did you want to respond to or clarify anything raised in public comment or in the city staff comments and recommendations?
No, I don't think so, except for the just the denial of the stucco. If we, I guess, just we'd have to replace with the broken tile that was there.
That's just the staff recommendation at this time. So
Okay.
that's, board discussion and vote.
Okay.
All right. We'll close the applicant's presentation and public comment in this time and move into board discussion and a vote.
This is Julia. I appreciate the efforts they're making to right the wrongs that we looked at previously. And maybe in a few decades I'll regret this sentiment, but I have no problem with replacing the broken tile with stucco personally.
Mm-hmm.
May I, Julia, that was you, is that correct?
Okay.
Sorry, I can't see you. I only see Fillmore, Allison, and Bill. That's only the face. Is that's not porch floor, or help me understand what extent of broken tile is up for discussion?
Yeah, it was. Can I answer?
Yeah, yes, certainly.
I was just. It was not the porch floor. It was just the face of that foundation, like right there.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would go along with Julia's comment or her position on that. Yeah.
Clarify, I think it's all proposed to be removed. Right? So I mean, like, I think part of it's already removed.
Yes.
Most of it, yeah. And I'm just saying, I'm okay with that. That's just me.
Julia, I share your sentiment that maybe I'll regret this many years from now, but I do agree the broken slate can be removed. It would be nice if it were retained somewhere, although I'm not, that wouldn't be part of any motion that I would make or anything like that, just because it's an interesting feature and I think it was clearly added later. But I would be okay with removing it.
Fillmore here. Julie, I was listening. I'm not sure I got it from Glenn's question. I'm not sure I got a complete clarification. I'm from the photographs, you know, the porch deck and the foundation and the porch stairs and the sides of the porch stair, the cheek walls of the porch stair were all covered in the broken tile. And is it that all of the broken tile except the porch floor, or all of the broken tile would be replaced? But I kind of got that. I thought I heard that the porch floor broken tile would stay. I just want to make sure I understand exactly what's happening.
Has it been removed? I thought the photo may have shown that it was gone. Am I wrong?
Yeah, the one I haven't. If staff could bring it back up, I know it was gone around the foundation. I'm not sure about the planter wall or the deck or the stairs.
It looks like it's still there on the point. Yeah,
It's still there on the porch, gone on the foundation and the stairs.
I don't see it on the porch floor, but
I don't think it is. I think
it's gone on the porch floor. The only place it's remaining is at the bottom of the photo where it's kind of the landing of the stairs. The walkway.
The walkway. Okay. Thank you.
So may I May I then interrupt with a question? So that the tile on the walkway that's in the center bottom of that photo, it is still intact and in decent condition. Is that fair?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mhm.
This is Bill. I agree to the point of the foundation walls potentially being stucco. Yeah, I was kind of hoping that that porch floor was still there. The broken tiles. Usually see those in application on a flat surface like a floor or this landing that we're talking about. It's obviously a later addition or a revision that was done. It's just a question of how much. I believe a point before that was made when we heard this application previously was that that was a fairly character defining type of a feature. So I don't know if that's now been changed to the point of deletion in its entirety. And I think the only other question I had, which I believe is answered looking at this photograph, I think these columns are being treated a little bit better than just sort of a number 2 pressure treated 6x6s. It looks like they're finished pretty well and primed and smooth. I just did want to make sure of that, and it does look that way, that they are finished looking. They're not rough. Was the only other point I wanted to make about those pressure treated columns. So, you know, I believe the stucco on the walls, the foundation walls, potentially on the steps, is definitely something that I can support. A little bit of sentiment for the loss of it on the porch floor up there, because it would bring a little bit of a chronological evolution of the building, you know, into play. Which is kind of nice to see, but otherwise, I'm in support of the recommendations that are made.
Fillmore here. Bill, I think I'm in agreement with you. I think it's unfortunate that it was all lost. As much from the photographs, there was quite a lot of it on the house, and of course, visually, it can be a little jarring, even though it is definitely characteristic of the period. I think when it was put on, I could, you know, be convinced that it's fine, that's okay, not fine, okay to stucco the foundation. But I do not think I would support not restoring it on the porch deck. I think it's visually fairly important to this little structure to show its evolution, and because I think that all of that work, stairs and the around the foundation and all, and the porch deck and the walkway and the little, there's a little planter wall out front. I'd have to go back to the original photographs because I don't see it on the drawings. I don't think it was all done at the same time, and so I could support everything but the porch deck, I think.
So I will say I have the same sentiment of Fillmore and Bill, and in that, I mean, I didn't love it, but it absolutely helps tell the story of this kind of cluster of buildings and the history of it not all being pure and original. What would our proposal? I mean, I absolutely am in favor of them keeping the tile walkway as is. I'm just curious how, you know, this is a case of not necessarily being able to duplicate what was there identically. So is that a sample that staff would need to look at? Is there an alternate material? I mean, I'm just trying to work through how we manage that. And then I will throw in there that I am comfortable with the rest of the conversation that we have had with the proposal.
Well, at the risk of going out on a limb and getting shot down. I'm gonna make a motion, just throw it out there. For approval as submitted with the board comment to retain the broken tile at the walkway.
We have a motion on the floor for approval as submitted with the board comment to retain the broken tile at the walkway. Do I have a second?
I guess I'm just concerned. I mean, that the tile is gone, so we're like after the fact at this point.
No, and I get that, Julia. That's where, you know, I don't want it to look
Like after the fact broken tile.
Silly.
right. And so I really, I don't know if I mean, we're kind of in a motion that, well, I guess the motion didn't get a second, but I would be open to the applicant exploring other options with staff to resolve it. Yeah, because you have the old tile on the walkway, as Julia just mentioned, and I am also in favor of keeping that. I think you're going to then end up with another generation of broken tile attempting to replace it. And you know, this is kind of a conundrum and an after the fact, something that should not have been demoed. So it is a tight place for all of us to be. And I don't know that there is a perfect answer for it.
I will say I'd like Julia's motion because I think it does respond to, you know, Glenn, your issue that we want to see the progression of this house. And I think that this 1950s broken tile certainly shows that. And if it's retained at least at this walkway, it tells some of that story. Because I can see where this goes if it stays on the walkway, and then we also want it on the porch floor, right? You get this after the fact copying that I'm not sure if they'd be able to recreate that. So I almost think you'd have to approve demolition of the walkway. And maybe I'm thinking about that the wrong way, so that you don't have this sort of odd looking original broken tile walkway and then a recreated broken tile porch. But Glenn, maybe that's not what you're suggesting.
Yeah, I can't just suggest that because I don't know. I mean, people don't really do it these days. And I mean, it's not a good place for any of us because, you know, we don't generally approve after the fact demolition. And I'm not trying to imply that it's okay to have removed it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also trying to be careful not to attempt to put something back that doesn't look like what was put there in the 50s or whenever this was put there. So, I mean, I guess that said, I can, to a degree, get on board with Julia's motion. I would remain adamant, of course, about this tile walkway to tell the story. It's just, if I thought it could be duplicated, I would ask for that, but I don't know that I have faith in that unless we were to require a sample.
So, Glenn, would you be on board with a revised motion from Julia? That is, I don't know how it would be revised. So
I would welcome a revised motion if she has one up her sleeve.
I don't know how I would revise it. I don't know. All I can think of is to cling to the original walkway. That's all I got.
Okay, well, we still have Julia's motion on the floor, but if there's no second,
And so her motion is for, what is the exact treatment of the floor for Julia's motion? I'm sorry, I probably am spinning here.
no, it's approval as submitted with a board comment to retain the broken tile at the walkway, but maybe Julia.
But is that stucco?
It looks just like concrete. I imagine they would just paint it.
But
And I think they referenced removing the tile on these drawings that they submitted.
But so that would be, well, so I know that we're in a motion, but I'm sorry. I'm going to ask Jessica. Jessica, can you please clarify what would the finish be per your proposal of the floor? I see the concrete slab and I'm sure there's a lot of residue from the tile, but what would happen with the floor?
The concrete slab would match the foundation and the steps. Yes.
So it would get stuccoed?
No, it would, I guess what, painted concrete slab, and yeah, right? And match that foundation, whatever the color of the foundation for the stucco.
And the condition of that slab with the tile removed allows it to be a finished surface, is that correct?
Yes, it is smooth. It is a smooth concrete slab. There's no rough anything. I'm not positive that we had tile on it when purchased on the porch floor when we purchased.
Okay. So Julia, I am on board, or I can be on board with your motion if we just clarify. I think we need to clarify that finish of that floor.
Okay.
So it doesn't end up running wild potentially, even if it's, with a different owner.
Okay. So I'll just restate it, and it was a motion for approval as submitted with staff comments 1, 2, 3, and a board comment to retain the broken tile paving at the front walkway, and a board comment to paint the slab at the porch floor.
I will second that motion.
Okay, just to read it back, we have a motion on the floor for approval as submitted with staff comments 1, 2, and 3. 2 board comments, 1 to retain the broken tile at the walkway, and a second to paint the slab at the porch floor. Glenn?
Yeah, in favor?
Okay. Now I'll put it to a vote. Bill?
Second. Sorry.
I got you. Bill?
Nay, opposed.
Fillmore?
Nay, opposed.
Julia?
Yeah, in favor.
Glenn?
Yeah, in favor.
The chair votes with the majority and the motion passes 3-4 and 2 against. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you.
Okay, agenda item number 8, 61 Reed Street, House A. Allison, if you'll give us an introduction and overview, please.
Sure. This is requesting preliminary approval for new construction of a duplex at the front of the lot. This is new construction in the east side in the Old City District. Here's some aerial context on Reed in between Nassau and Hanover. Existing site photos. Street context. And now I can turn it over to the applicant.
This is Kevin Herter, architect for the owner. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. You guys have seen this project before. You might just want to jump to the notes page, which I think is the second sheet. Yep. Over the past couple of years, we've kind of been tweaking and massaging this to get it, hopefully so that everybody can be on the same page. The majority of the comments on the last review were just with having to do with adjusting the massing of the house, some minor comments about the windows, and some small things regarding just the detailing. So, you know, we've essentially, the big picture is that we reduced the front width of the house by 2 feet. We had previously lowered the size of the house in the last presentation. We enlarged the windows slightly to make them taller to fit proportionally after discussing it with staff. And we adjusted the dormers on the east side so that they are equally spaced. So the rest of the comments are pretty minor based on previous comments from staff and the board. If you have any questions, feel free. If you want to jump to the elevation pages, I think they're 200. Oop, one too far, a couple too far. Yeah, right there. So this is the first two. If you go to the next page, the two elevations on the left were the previous submittal. The two elevations on the right are the front and the west facing facade. The obviously dimensions in red show the reduction of the width. You can also notice that the size of the windows got taller in height. The front door and the awning over the front door got modified to have a little bit more detailing in proportion to the house. What else? If you're looking at the west elevation, the window that's to the left of the door became a double hung size door like the rest of them. And the height of the parapet over the porch got reduced on the front facade so that it tucks in under the eave into the fascia. You can go to the 201 and the next sheet. So this is the top right corner is the east elevation down the driveway side. You'll notice the dormers are equally spaced, but the windows below them lining up, and then figured out the internal programming so that we could adjust all of that as necessary. And then just maybe look at the streetscapes to look at how it all fits in. That's the previous, that probably was the first one, second one, third one, and now the current streetscape. So there's, in talking with staff, there's obviously a wide range of building sizes, both mostly in width on this street and a wide range of ages. There's the skinny Charleston single house that you typically find in this neighborhood. There's also the wide or extra wide, not Charleston single house or pseudo Charleston single house, along with other variations of widths and heights of houses. So the eave lines generally line up with the houses on either side of the street up and down. The width falls somewhere in between. It's not a super skinny. It's never intended to be a super skinny Charleston single house. It's definitely not the widest one on the street by far. And we've skinnied it up with the hopes of getting it more in line with what was requested. And I think that's all.
Thank you, Mr. Hertdorfer. Are there any board questions for the applicant?
This is Bill. I just have one. Can you go to this side elevation? I believe the previous sheet that was shown. Yeah, that one right there. Kevin, have those dormers gotten wider, or is there something, is that just an optical?
They may have. I think, we had to slightly widen the windows once we selected a window manufacturer. And so, just with the proportion of the windows, they may have grown slightly.
Okay. Yeah, it just looks like I'm seeing a little bit more width at the sides of the windows there than from the previous. Okay, thank you.
They're definitely broader, Bill.
Yeah.
Any other board questions for the applicant at this time? All right, we'll move into public comment. Frankie, do we have anyone speaking from the public?
We do not have anyone signed up to speak.
Okay, and I do not have any written comments. So Allison, if you'll give us city staff comments and recommendations, please.
Okay. So we have previous staff comments here. Staff observation for this time, the conceptual approval incorporated several board and staff comments. Staff has worked with the applicant on incorporating the incorporated comment. Staff comments, number one, staff has worked with the applicant on incorporating previous board and staff comments, concentrating on a need to reduce the width of the front mass as evident in the comment. Massing and proportions are out of scale with the context of the streetscape. Front mass has been reduced by 2 feet and is now proposed at 21 feet wide, which is closer to the original width of 20 feet when first reviewed by BAR and is a better balance between the adjacent structures. Number two, while the dimension strings look to be the same, the width of the dormers and the width of the dormer windows have increased on the elevations. The dormer exists for the window, and the dormer face should be composed of the window and single casing members on either side with wall framing directly behind. The width is not normally more than 6 inches nominally and should not be increased for interior arrangement. Reduce the width of the dormers by eliminating the extra wall framing besides the windows. Number three, update the wall section on page A400 to reflect the current elevation, which shows the porch roof intersecting with the house roof under the fascia and crown, and also to include the 24-inch tall knee wall at the half story. Staff recommendation, preliminary approval with staff comment.
Thank you, Allison. Does the applicant have want to respond to or clarify anything raised in the city staff comments and recommendations?
No clarification, in agreement with staff comments. The only thing I wanted to additionally request was that if there are minor issues such as this, that the board would look at approving this with final review by staff. That's all.
Okay. All right, I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote at this time.
Oh, this is Bill. I'll go ahead and jump in. I agree with staff's comments and recommendation, especially that comment number 2 about the width of the dormers. The other thing I did notice on that drawing, it appears that the windows, if you can go back again to that side elevation again, Frankie or Allison, you driving it? Sorry. Yeah, that one we were looking at a second. There you go. It looks like the window sills are sitting like right down on top of the fascia line, but you can see in the side elevation, there's actually a little return of that roof as there should be. So I think something's drawn a little off there. I think that needs to be addressed because there's actually as there should be, a little bit of roof to the bottom of those windows. And the way this is drawn, it looks like they're right down on top of the fascia board, which they wouldn't be. So I think that, and the narrower dormers will read a little bit different and hopefully a little bit better. That's all I have.
I'm pretty much in alignment as well. You know, and I see a number of minor issues like that that maybe just need to be a little better coordinated on the drawings. I think, for example, the eave detail that's provided doesn't seem to quite match the eave detail on the elevations. Porch eave detail also. And for example, the canopy over the front door, there's sort of a detailed dimensioned elevation of it, but not a section through it, and it doesn't show up on the side elevations. So things like that, I think, are going to be pretty important for the builders to be able to build it like I know Kevin wants them to do. So yeah, just some general coordination of the drawings, but generally I'm comfortable with the design of the building at this point.
Phil here, I don't have anything to add. I think, I agree with Julia and certainly with Bill's comments, and certainly the dormers, the sills of the windows need to be up off the eave of the roof. That becomes a very complicated flashing detail if you haven't got a little space in there. And so I'm on board with staff's comments and my fellow board members.
I agree as well.
So we'll try a motion. I'll make a motion for preliminary approval with staff comments and a board comment to carefully coordinate the construction documents for final review. And final review by staff.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for preliminary approval with staff comments and a board comment to carefully coordinate the construction documents for final review and final review by staff. Do I have a second?
This is Bill. I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. All right, let's put the motion to a vote. Fillmore?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Hertdorfer.
Thank you.
All right, we are on agenda item number 9, and Julia needs to be kicked out of the session.
Thanks.
Someone would remove Julia. Okay, thank you. All right, 102A Bufane Street. Allison, if you'll give us an introduction and overview, please.
Okay, we have 102A Bufane requesting conceptual approval of proposed alterations to the existing structure and a new dependency structure. It is not rated in the Harleston Village, built circa 1976 in the Old and Historic District. And here's some context. Bufane. Existing site photos. Sanborn maps. And I can turn it over to the applicant now.
Good evening, board members. This is Erin Lanier with Julia Martin Architects here on behalf of the owner of 102A Bufane Street, Matt Jameson. Unit A is the right half of the 2 attached townhomes you see here. It was constructed in 1976. And admittedly, they are not especially elegant structures, but the location and the parcel have a lot going for them. And so we think this structure is worthy of a little bit of attention and renovation. This unit that we're working on was most recently used as a rental for many years. but we're in the process of helping the owner renovate it to be his personal residence. And as part of that, we're proposing some improvements to the exterior, including a rear porch and a new dependency structure in the backyard. Next slide. Here are just some photos of the existing conditions and details, which are not of the highest quality. We will be proposing that the door and surround, as well as the plastic shutters, be replaced. We're also going to rework the concrete block steps and iron railing here at the front. The rear yard, which you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, is quite deep. We're proposing a new accessory structure there. And then just to give you a little bit of context, this lot backs up to the property on Wentworth Street, where you recently approved a 2.5-story rear dwelling by Neil Stevenson. Next slide, please. These are just some additional context photos. To the west of the townhomes is a sizable historic residence. To the east is a large parking lot, which serves the new 3-story condominiums at the corner of Smith and Duquesne. And the primary view of what we're doing at the rear will be through the gates of the adjacent parking lot, as shown there in the top right-hand photo. Next slide.
Oh, sorry. Screen's frozen a little bit. Did I go one too far?
I think so.
I don't know why it's being so slow. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So it's our existing and proposed site plan. The owner will be working with a landscape architect to make some upgrades to the paving at the front. But in terms of our scope, you can see we're adding a new screen porch that will be at the rear of the residence, and then the new dependency structure beyond that. This property is quite low and of course in a flood zone. So the ground floor of the accessory structure will be just unfinished storage and workshop space. And then the second floor will be used as a guest suite and an office for our client. Next slide. At the first floor, we're reworking the front steps. As I mentioned, they'll stay within their existing footprint. And then at the rear, we'll be replacing the existing masonry steps and landing with a new covered screen porch that you see there at the top of the page. Next slide. There aren't any exterior changes to the second floor, but there you see the hipped standing seam metal roof at the rear porch. Next slide. And this is the dependency plan, which will be solid masonry at the ground floor and then wood frame above, including a masonry stair to the second floor. And in case anyone's wondering about the zoning situation, the structure is completely compliant with the regulations of this property. It meets the setbacks and lot coverage limitations for the lot and isn't subject to some of the eave height limitations that normally apply to accessory buildings. But as you'll see, we've been careful to ensure that it's clearly subordinate to the main house. Next slide. Moving to the elevations, this is the front and rear of the main house. At the front facade, the stairs will get cleaned up and a new code compliant iron railing added. We're proposing a copper canopy over a new 9-light wood entry door. The tacked on plastic shutters will be replaced with new operable composite shutters and appropriate hardware. And then we'll add new louvered doors below the landing at the crawl space access. At the rear, there will be sliding glass doors that lead out to the new screen porch, which will feature a standing seam metal roof. We'll have a masonry foundation and stairs, and then louvered screening between piers below. Next slide. These are just those elements as seen from the east elevation. Next slide. This is the dependency structure at the rear of the lot, which is effectively a 1-story gabled volume on a raised basement. We'll use a lime-based stucco finish on concrete block at the foundation and then clad the second level in boral lap siding. Here too, we're proposing a standing seam metal roof with hand crimped ridge. And at the south elevation facing butane and the garden, we'll have custom sapelli doors at the ground floor and a large window with tongue and groove shutters at the second floor. Next slide.
Oh no. See if it's gonna let me do it.
Yeah.
That go too far?
There's one, if you can go back one, there's a site section just that shows sort of the relationship between the two. If that's not too much trouble, if it is, that's okay.
It's a lot to ask of this computer.
Sorry.
It's 6:30.
All right, so that is the site section showing the new structure in relation to the existing residence, both in terms of the distance and the height, which is clearly subordinate. We've also noted here that the new structure is approximately 120 feet from the public right-of-way. And then I'll let you end with our 3D studies with the view from Bathhouse Street. And that is all I have, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Erin. Do my fellow board members have any questions for the applicant? Or do we want to get through the renderings? Okay, well, looks like that's it. Okay, it looked like your screen was still thinking Allison, but.
I thought this was the last page, but
that is the last page.
Okay, yeah. Okay. It is still thinking that. I don't know why.
I realized that when I looked, it is the last page. Anyways, okay. Any questions from board members for the applicant?
No.
All right. Frankie, do we have anyone speaking from the public?
No, we do not.
And there is no written public comment, so we'll move on to city staff comments and recommendations. Allison, if you'll provide those, if you can get to them.
We'll see. Let's try this again. No, I got it. Just closed it out. Maybe. Okay, we'll do it from here just in case. Staff observations. While the original structure is not deemed historic, the proposed accessory structure is subordinate to the original structure. Number 2, visibility to the new work is from the east. Number 3, existing door surround is not historic and does not match Unit B. Number 4, the application includes several improvements such as the installation of operable shutters. Staff comments. Number 1, while a 3/4 light door is not typical and is perhaps a less urban option, the structure and location of the door is recessed significantly from the street. Additionally, the adjacent multifamily building includes 3/4 light door panels or door pairs. Number 2, the new crawl space doors should be painted black or Charleston green so as to fade into the alcove. Number 3, the framework of the screening should be as minimal as possible and should be constructed interior of the columns, porch beam, and balustrade so that these elements remain in the forefront. Number 4, the color of the framework should be generally be flat black so it recedes into the background or painted to match the columns and balustrade. Staff recommendation, conceptual approval with staff comments and final review by staff.
Thank you, Allison. Erin, did you want to respond to any of the staff comments or recommendations?
No, thank you.
All right, we'll move into board discussion and vote at this time.
This is Bill. I'll go ahead. It's a great improvement to the property. All positives. I agree with staff's comments, and I agree with staff's recommendation.
Fillmore, likewise, I have nothing to add.
I agree with Bill that this is a great improvement to that property and agree with staff comments.
I agree as well.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and make a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments and final review by staff.
All right, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with staff comments and final review by staff. Do I have a second?
Second, Glenn.
All right, we'll put it to a vote. Fillmore,
Yay in favor.
Bill,
Yay in favor.
Glenn.
Yay in favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our agenda for the evening. If Julie is still there, I don't think there's any need to bring her back in. We have a quorum for purposes of voting on a motion to adjourn. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chairman, motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Great meeting, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Thanks, you guys.
So we got the in-person update that's on my calendar. I'm going to cancel that vacation.
Oh, you're on mute, Julia.
We'll have to wear pants from now on.
Yeah, well, I mean, as always, we will monitor and see if that's when we actually go back in person. That is definitely the intention, and we'll let y'all know if anything changes.
All right, cool.
And also so y'all know, I made a hard argument for there to be a hybrid setup, but that was vetoed from the highest level.
Okay.
Yep.
Back to the old days. Is everybody?
Yeah.
I just can't see everybody. Wait a minute. It's just us four.
No, it looks like everybody but you and Glenn dropped out.
All right. I just wanted to mention, and